So today is it's going to be a great conversation with Ken Huang. We are thrilled to have him here today. Ken is, one of the most influential voices at the intersection of AI and cybersecurity. Ken is a prolific author and thought leader with over 10 books covering everything from Gen AI security to Web3 infrastructure. Ken's the CEO and Chief AI Officer of DistributedApps.ai. Ken holds prominent roles as co-chair in several global working groups focused on AI safety and secure development, including the Cloud Security Alliance, which I'm sure we'll talk about today, OWASP, and the World Digital Technology Academy. Ken's a contributor to the OWASP Top 10 for LLMs, something we all love and enjoy, and a participant in the NIST Gen AI Working Group. Ken also teaches at University of San Francisco. And look, Ken's sought after. He's done keynotes at RSA, at Davos, at the World Economic Forum, the World Bank. So Ken, we are like just thrilled to have you here. Welcome and thanks for taking the time.
Oh, thank you, Lee. Yeah, thanks for this kind of introduction.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so we're going to dive in. Everybody, if they want to ask questions, I will moderate those. You can just put them in the Q&A section of the webinar. So Ken, let's just start with, we're going to get into agentic AI and red teaming and some of the risks. But let's just start with in your view, like what do you think has fundamentally changed in the AI security landscape over the last 12 to 18 months?
Yeah, so I think maybe just from the AI, especially the generative AI, right? The model performance improved a lot. The pre-training scaling law get kind of challenge, diminish the return, and people really focus on the agentic AI, so chain of thought reasoning. The implication to the security is certainly the chain of thought reasoning. Can we trust it? There's still no explanation. Like the model can deceive you from time to time, can hallucinate as well. So what we see is this security, like people especially deploy the agentic AI applications, do have we did some research, like in OWASP, we have a kind of a core risk. We just published actually 2 or 3 days ago the AI vulnerability scoring system
Yeah.
for the core risk, the agentic AI core risk, something like a tool misuse, access control violations, the supply chain attack, memory attack, right? So those are what we see actually. Some is academic research, some real. Maybe just 2 examples just happened a few days ago. One is the Replit code agent. It's really
Yeah.
good. Everyone use it. I
Yeah.
use it. But it hallucinate, it delete the database. Even when the developer asks it not to delete, right? It's actually has access to the production database. So I wrote a Substack article about how we can kind of
Yeah.
in the future make sure that not happen. At least you don't want to give the coding agent have access to the production database. Even the developer, like a real person developer should have not have the production. Like you do
Right.
need a little bit of separation there. So another one is the Amazon Q. So one of my co-leader for the AI VSS project within OWASP, Michael, he did a really deep research about how it happened. But in high level, is the hacker was able to embed kind of the indirect prompt injection or whatever in the Amazon Q coding agent, and it was deployed to the IDE. And if people use it, it could wipe up clean your system. So, and also the Amazon resource.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is just the most 2 recent examples. So it's a lot of change. It's really
Yeah.
hard to catch up. I would say, and the companies they trying to deploy the agent because the agent certainly is the future, and and they didn't realize the security implication. So that is
Yeah. Yeah,
something we
maybe that's a
help,
really good point, right? Because we are
right?
seeing agentic AI, the rise of it and things like MCP. Like, why do you think and it's interesting to hear your perspective on like it sounds like you're seeing enterprises, we're seeing this too in our customer base, but enterprises really want to adopt it. What do you think is driving that versus, the kind of the initial wave of chatbots, now we're at kind of the second wave. What do you think is driving that?
Yeah, so the initial chatbot, it just direct like ask model and then model give you back. Some may be using retrieval augmented generation or RAG database to give some knowledge. So it's more like at the very beginning, it's really the token generation. It's generative. The agent is really action, right? So you actually can do some work. So it's like you can optimize some of the workflow. That's its promise. So eventually, it really removes some of the manual step, so to unleash the productivity. Uh,
Yeah.
this uh, this is certainly is a huge, like it can generate. Some people estimate at least a $1 trillion revenue in short term. In
Yeah.
long term, it's more, right? So. Uh, what actually in my book, Agentic AI book,
Yeah.
just published in June 10th, it already have more than 7,000 paid download in Springer. So just shameless plug here. But in this book, I actually talk about Agentic AI economy will be huge. It will be bigger than cloud security or API or the mobile computing, like cloud computing or PC or even mainframe. So it's all combined because it can unleash your productivity.
Right.
And of course, it will replace some of the job, but it will create more jobs, then it will eliminate.
Yeah.
So,
Yep. No, that's great. Yeah, that's great. So, okay, so to your point, we're seeing this traction of agentic AI creates productivity. Totally agree that it's more action oriented. Okay, so what do you think are the biggest security challenges in this new agentic AI world?
yeah, so if you look at um, in the older days, older, it's not really older, but from generative AI or agentic AI, it's old. So if you look at the 2022, 2023, it's really, you just do the query and you get the result back. So it's read only, but it really give you the what happened, right? It give you intelligence of what happened within your enterprise organization. So now if you really want to do something for you, you tool use, right? It's so we maybe talk about the tool,
Yeah.
right? This is important, and that means it's not just read only, it's a read and write. Then it's has more, like even with read only, you already have access control issues. People find out that if you put the copilot into your Microsoft environment, if you give it too much privileges, then it has issues, right, in the read only. Now, like if you really do the read and write, has the action taking, certainly the identity issues become more important. So we have a research paper about why the current OAuth, SIMO, uh, JWT, all this is still good, but it's not sufficient. We need a kind of uh, trying to use some delegation to make sure that you just delegate enough for this specific task for
Yep.
specific duration, not just delegate your whole identity access rights to an agent. Yeah,
Yep.
like example, like if you ask it to uh, just scan the resume to recommend a candidate,
Yep.
but then it has access to cellular data and it give you other cellular data for that specific task, which is not good, right? So
Right.
this is just example. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a good that is a good example. And when you think about these systems, Can you talk a little bit about some of these attacks? We hear a little about tool poisoning, puppet attacks, the rug pull attacks, which have been out there for a while. Can you talk about those and like are they likely in these MCP or these agentic architectures? Are there different attacks that you're seeing? How do you think about that?
Yeah, so I would step back, see what we did actually. We look at all this different kind of puppet attack, poisoning, rug pull attack, right?
Yeah.
And we basically in the AI VSS project, we have more than like 100 people involved, um, and we look at it. It's three stage. One is really the tool discovery. And then the second stage is tool use, and then the tool governance stage.
Yep.
So in the tool discovery stage, if you poison your tool, you get to the malicious MCP server, right? And um, potentially, okay, let's say uh, it's more like the puppet server, right? If it's a
Yeah.
puppet, the idea of a puppet attack is you have a malicious MCP server hide behind the denial, right? So
Yep.
denial server. So you do a tool discovery, you find a denial server, but eventually it was the puppet server who did
Yeah.
the thing, right? So this is a puppet attack during the discovery phase, and the poisoning attack is more during the tool use phase. And when you use this tool, actually the tool is poisoned. And instead of it's just maybe do a read of database or to a certain row, it also give the attack, right? The um, privacy data, right?
Yeah.
Because of the poisoning in the description, because the model will do the work based on your tool description. It will, right? If you are not protecting your server very well, right, then it will have a problem. So then the rug pull is basically initially it's denial. People trust it, so it build a
Yeah.
reputation score somehow to the client of the MCP server, and suddenly it's rug pull it replace it with a malicious server, right? So
Yeah.
this is certainly is easy to happen, right? That's why we actually have proposal and we write a paper like we need to do digital signature all this, right? Have to one of actually my co-contribute to the paper, Venice. He worked for AWS. Now he moved to Meta. He's certainly very, very brilliant guy, right? Intelligent, and he has like you have to have a tool definition. Make sure it has digital signature. It should not change. Yeah. So there is. Go back to your question. If
No,
you
no, you answered it, right? We
right.
talked through the tool poisoning, the puppet attacks, and the rug pull attacks. You know, I guess when it comes to red teaming these agents,
Mhm.
how do you think about, I guess, the difference between red teaming some agentic architecture as opposed to what we previously, a lot of people were red teaming, which was either the model directly or maybe a RAG application. Like, how do you think about the difference in red teaming these kinds of architectures?
So just see if I understand your question. Red teaming of agentic AI,
Agentic AI, yeah,
yeah, different from just generative AI, right?
exactly,
So
exactly.
yeah, so generative AI, when you do red teaming, it's the discipline is very established. Most frontier models they do this every
Yep,
day. So that's is established discipline. There's a benchmark all this. For agentic AI, it's more complex. You have more attack surface. You have tool use, the memory poisoning, right? And the planning, and also it takes the next action based on the previous tool use, right, effect. So
yep,
that means your red teaming scope is different. Yeah,
yep,
mostly you have to do multiple times. So what I see in is currently in Hugging Face, the data set for red teaming, it's just a single turn prompt. You ask
Yeah.
the model or application do, and you get, and then you say, okay, this attack success rate or ASR,
Right.
just not enough, right? So you basically have to say, okay, I have to do multiple time. Based on that, do the tool calling. From the tool calling, what's the result back? Then you need to do another prompt. So it's a long range, multiple
Yeah.
turn red teaming, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so it's interesting to hear that with standard Gen AI, maybe single turn attacks, single turn red teaming is effective to get some baseline, but with agentic architectures, multi-turns required, that yeah, that we're seeing that same thing actually quite a bit. So okay, so let's talk a little about because you just released the AI controls matrix with the Cloud Security Alliance, who are very involved with it. Talk a little about that framework, especially in context, there's a lot of frameworks out there. There's the NIST AI RMF, which you've been involved with as well, and things like MITRE Atlas. Maybe a little bit of overview of this framework and why it's different.
Yeah, I think they are complementary with different folks. So the AICM has 242 controls, 18 domains. We increase the domain, especially the model security domain. So it's more like looking from the technical procedure and the governance control. How do you apply it, right? So it's a framework, so it has multiple documents in it. We have the control framework itself with taxonomy we published last year. And we have the implementation guide. How do you implement those controls? And then we have the auditing guide. How the auditor can audit your implementation. And then if you want to do the self-assessment, we have the CAIQ, right? The questionnaire. So it's a kind of slew of document, and also we map to different framework. Right. So UAI Act, all this. So this is a kind of complete, this is why it take more than 2 years to make this. It's a lot of effort people. So, and if you look at this Atlas, it's really good, right? Atlas really, you look yourself as the attack, right? So from the attack, adversary attack person, how do you attack system, right? So this is stage by stage, and
Right.
certainly it's really good. Can be used actually once you have the control using Atlas to to model it, right? To further to see if you implement it or not. And if you look at the NIST AI IMF, it's high level, but it's really good. You have to make sure you map your risks, like you first map, and then you measure the risk, and then you can manage and govern, right? So I think every framework should really follow this kind of guidance. So if you really look at the NIST AI IMF is the top, right? The yes, the what AICM control matrix, right, is used really to implement part of it, more on the management and the governance, right? And the Atlas is really on the mapping, like it's trying to map different risks, right? And AI VSS is on the measure, right? So we did the AI VSS. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I
Yeah.
think
No, that's
it's
great.
complementary.
Yeah, and on the controls front, we actually just got a question that might that dovetails into this topic pretty well. So you had mentioned earlier about hallucinations actually. And so in the agentic of AI, in AI, the question is from a cybersecurity perspective, how would you moderate behavior like hallucinations of AI agents? How do you think about dealing with that dynamic? And are there controls that you've seen that could be effective, again, in agentic architectures for things like hallucinations?
Yeah, so the reason why agentic is becoming important is in like if you just look at the initial control, like the parameter you can use, like a temperature, top P, top
Yeah,
K, right? It has a some effect, but still it cannot really reduce or eliminate the hallucination. The agentic AI actually especially in multiple agent system, like if you can scope the agent, if you ask one agent to do too many things, usually it hallucinates more. So
Right.
you basically, the idea is you give an agent a limited scope and then have another agent to check, right?
Yeah.
So this is better than you have a God agent.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and then the agent has access to the real-time resource through the API, through
Right.
MCP server.
Yeah.
But usually API now is through MCP server, um, and to the database. So this certainly will reduce hallucination. But one thing we have to be very careful. It's like you cannot 100% reduce the
Yeah.
hallucination,
Yeah.
right? It's really hard. It's like you cannot have 100% security, but the
Yeah.
internet is still like the economy is based on that, right? You don't
Right.
need the 100%, but you still like can
Yeah.
operate.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a fair point. Yeah, what that threshold is. It's interesting you talk a little bit about kind of building these securely from the ground up, right? Minimizing scope, giving it a task, a specific task, not too many tasks. I think that all makes sense. I think for our audience, I would guess that some of them, work in environments where the engineering team kind of goes and the security team is following. We've seen, you and I have seen this for the last 30 years, right? In cybersecurity, you go back to the 90s when people were going from client server to web, or the 2000s data center to cloud, and like stopping that innovation is really hard to build those best practices. So you just mentioned something I thought was interesting, is like you talked about this guard agent. Like, can you talk a little bit more about that concept?
God agent means agent is can do anything. Like one agent
Oh,
do, yeah,
I
it's
see.
not a God, sorry, it's
Yeah.
God.
Oh,
God,
a
yeah,
God
yeah.
agent. I
Yeah,
see.
God
And
agent,
minimize,
yeah.
but back to the point about, like, okay, if you've got, some people will build agents with too much scope, and the security team will be trying to chase that. Are there controls that you've seen people start to put in place that would, mitigate some of those risks while you maybe remediate it at the core problem?
Yeah, I think it's go back to good old principle of authentication, access control, and auditing, the monitoring, right? You should build. And also, I think using the digital signature, if possible, right? And still, like even we argue that the OAuth or JWT token is not enough. So the MCP protocol, when it is just released at the very beginning, it basically say you need to implement MCP like server as a resource server and also authorization server. So everyone have to implement. That's too much work, right? So I think now there's effort to trying to say, okay, your authorization server has to connect to the IDP server within your enterprise, right?
Right.
So you basically is a resource server, right? So
Right.
I think that is a good idea. And maybe just yesterday I talked with the Sneak team. Sneak is they doing the SAST or
Yeah.
status code
Static code
analysis tool,
analysis. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they build a MCP server, which I think it's quite good. When you do, it can connect to cursor, right?
Yeah.
And when you do the Viber coding, if you just say it has a rule say if the package is vulnerable, you should automatically fix the package or upgrade the package, NPM package or Python package, right? And if the code itself is not secure, you can also real time. So whenever it generates code, once it's generated, it goes to the MCP server, which called the sneak, and then it sneak server get a response, right? And then
Right.
it's updated code. So
Right.
it's if you look at this CI/CD pipeline in the older days, you finish the code and then CI/CD pipeline kick in to do the scan. Now the earlier, when you write the
Earlier. Yeah.
code,
Yeah.
immediately it's trying to check, right? So even before this, so that's I think it's very interesting.
Yeah, and I think to your point that we were saying earlier, again, getting earlier in the cycle makes sense, where you could also red team the agent, during development, right? Before
Oh
it goes to
yeah,
production.
you
Yeah.
have to read the teaming early and read the teaming often. It's
Yeah.
otherwise it's too yeah. So we actually publish the guide. It's kind of a recipe how do you read teaming the agent. So we identify 12 important categories that agent could go wrong, go wrong, right? So how you do test it. So the
Yeah.
top one is certainly the access control, right?
Right.
So that certainly, yeah, there is a recipe like how you test it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. You just made me think about the top 10 for LLMs starts with, I think number one is prompt injection, right? And then there
Yes.
is over reliance or over permissive access, which is further down. It sounds like you're saying that permissions is probably more important, at least in the hierarchy of risks with agents, different than with Gen AI models and chatbots. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I would say yeah. So prompt injection overall it's just too big a category, right? So it's basically injection is still a very important like vulnerability that we have to deal with it, but it has many different manifestation. So one is really the access control. You can prompt injection, you right, inject your
Yeah.
agent to do the violation. That's one possibility, right? Just one.
Yep.
There's other thing that in your agent implementation, without even prompt injection, can cause that. That's why we put it in the top because it's right. It's more than just prompt injection, but
Yeah.
it's kind of like a prompt injection is also has a lot of different like a go manipulation, right? The
Right.
alignment, is go alignment. I think this is a bigger research area
Yeah, yeah.
in the current one, right?
Yeah,
So
goal manipulation. That's a
yeah,
really good point. Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
that's also can be prompt injected, like
Right.
using
It would be a
what?
form of prompt injection effectively, right? Goal manipulation
Yeah,
would be.
yeah. Like Microsoft published a paper called Crescendo attack.
Yes, of
Right.
course. Yeah.
So it's like gradually you can change its objective or goals
Yeah.
from initial like booking a air ticket to maybe finally book just about buy a book or vice versa, right? So
Right.
you can
Right.
gradually do it or initially just ask patient's age information to finally get the all patients' information. Right?
Right.
So,
Right. Right. Yeah. So it's effectively a prompt injection with a specific task. And to your point, back to your point about red teaming, that would require multi-turn kind of engagement to get to that point. So,
right.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So okay, let's get a little bit back to controls. So if we've got a bunch of enterprises on this webinar, I'm sure, and when they think about the AI controls matrix that you all just published, where do you think they should start? Like, is there some area they should start as they're deploying MCP or app to app or agent to agent architectures? Where should they start? Is there a certain category?
Yeah, so in the implementation guide, also in the auditing guide, we really say the actor, right? If you are the provider of the frontier model, you have different folks than if you're just building agentic AI applications. So it's a different. So we have the different. I think we have six different actors, right? So yeah, just for purpose of today, I think most people will be just agentic AI application builder. Okay, let's say it's application builder. So the first one is really look at which model you use. So we
Mhm.
have what is called the together with this AICM, I think you can look at the threat modeling tool, which is a Maestro framework that we publish at the Cloud Security Alliance. So at the very beginning, you need the first layer is a model. Do you use an open source model or closed source model? And what kind of data it is, especially the open source model, right? And how can you rely on this for
Yeah,
your own business use case? And
yeah,
then you need to go to the next level because agent will have to use real-time data. So how do you protect this data? Where is the data coming from? How much you can trust it? What could potentially be the vulnerability? If you have the data in vector database, can you encrypt it? Or how about if people have access and inject some poisonous data, do an indirect prompt injection, right? All this. So it's a data layer. Then usually people using the agentic AI framework like AutoGen, right, TrojAI or LangGraph to build the application. Those framework is orchestration framework. They are not security framework, right? So how do you kind of have the cross-cutting behavior to say, okay, all this framework I use, I need the authentication, access control, and also the auditing, right? That's why I have a GitHub open source code. People can take a look at zero trust, right? So
Right.
basically implement this kind of cross-cutting behavior into it. It's just a POC code. But take a look and just borrow some idea. Microsoft actually referenced my GitHub code in their research. So
Oh, wow.
yeah. And this is a layer three. So then your layer four is you deploy the agentic AI code. Where you deploy in a Kubernetes pod or somewhere in GCP or AWS, what kind of security control you need to implement depends on where it's a deployment, right? So if we have more time, I can go to another three layers. So, but very fast. So the after that is the evaluation. How do you evaluate your agent? And if the agent is lying to you, how do you know it? Right? So the evaluation, then the compliance layer, security compliance. The agent actually is doing some security compliance work, how much you can trust it, and how you can introduce this. And finally, the whole agent ecosystem. The agent talk with agent, especially with Google A2A, becomes a Linux standard now. I think more and more people will use it. I certainly believe that in the next maybe 10 years, the majority of internet traffic will be agent to agent, the majority of internet traffic, and how we can enable it, right?
Yeah.
You have to have an agent naming service. That's why I actually publish the agent naming
Right.
service
Right.
document through a WASP, and people use it. And we're also working with MIT Media Lab trying to operationalize it. Right? They have the agent index or agent registry, so they are leveraging ANS. So we're
Yeah.
currently working with them. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah,
big.
yeah, yeah. It'd be a kind of an offshoot of DNS. Yeah, that makes sense. So we just got a question that's sort of related to what you were talking about, a little bit more on the kind of how this can happen inside an organization, right? I think the question effectively is that sometimes things like hallucinations and security is not well understood by the machine learning teams or the data science teams. And they might think about this as like, hey, it's just these issues just require monitoring. But you just to reinforce what you just said is clearly it's more than just monitoring. I mean, monitoring is important, but it is not fully sufficient to secure an entire agentic AI workflow. Have you seen, I mean, you've got tools that maybe you use and frameworks you use, but have you seen ways to overcome this? Like with data science teams and ML teams and AI teams in organizations where they kind of see this as a more of a monitoring problem instead of a broader cybersecurity issue?
Yeah, let me first rephrase your question to see if I understand the question, then I answer. So your question is the data science scientist team or model training
Yeah,
team. They basically have the ML SecOps or the pipelines,
exactly.
right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And monitoring is not enough, right?
Right.
Yeah, monitoring is important, but not enough. What else they can do, right?
Yeah. And a
Um,
little bit of like, how do you have you seen effective ways to kind of communicate with these teams to help them understand the bigger needs and bigger picture of securing these environments?
Yeah, I think the key word is really the ML SecOps, right? Security operations. So it's really first from data security. That's why, like in the book, Generative AI Security, we have a chapter on the security, like where's the data coming from, how you protect your training data, right? And all this data security related item on the data security. Then you have the model. How do you protect the model, right? And then the pipeline, how do you do it? And then how do you scan if you're using third-party model? Make sure it's not pickle file. If you pickle file, it may have the issues, right? We also actually put it in the
Yeah.
AICM control matrix to see, like, to have a signature verification of the model if you use before you fine-tuning it, right? Because the model can execute, it's a binary, right? If you download. So there's a multiple touch point in terms of the whole pipeline. And then you go to the application, right? So that's why the application is also including the database, vector database security, the API security, the runtime security. So it's not just one touch point. So key thing is it's a team sport. It's not just one team. So the data team or model training team, they have to work with the security team
Yeah.
together, I would say.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. Yeah, we see that. It's challenging to kind of bring these things. This has been a age-old problem. We saw it in software engineering as well. Software engineering teams working with cybersecurity teams, there can be friction there, but I think it is improving for sure. So we got a couple more questions. I'll get to another couple questions I have too. But one question, back a little bit on the agentic, red teaming agentic architectures. What other best metrics do people evaluate these target agents and models apart from things like ASR using red team tools like Pirate and Garak? TrojAI has some as well, but like, how do you think about like the metrics to evaluate the security efficacy of agents? Any ideas there?
Yeah, so in terms of the agent performance, there's a lot of like benchmark, like GAIA, right? General AI Assistant benchmark. In terms of security, like you mentioned ASR, um, and especially for agentic red teaming, there's some research paper I recently found. It's trying to make it as a benchmark, but I don't see the data set. I think it's by university student. It's called as the agent agentic security red teaming benchmark.
Yep.
There is, yeah, just I think yesterday or the day before yesterday it's published. I honestly I did not see like industry-wise the benchmark yet. The Our red teaming guide is trying to give some of the kind of idea of what you do test, right? Give some example prompt and what kind of scenario you need to test. So we have 12 categories in Agentic AI testing guide, red teaming guide. And for each category, there's different scenario you can test and a different prompt. Some, of course, multiple prompt. I don't know if we have time, but otherwise I can do a demo. I built a Viber coded a system which will do this kind of
Mhm.
testing against the A2A server. Right?
Oh,
So
okay.
maybe next time.
Yeah, maybe next time. Yeah, that's interesting, Ken, for
Yeah.
sure.
So
Yeah, so no, that's great. Yeah, that makes sense. And a couple other questions, and we're getting a whole bunch of questions now, which is awesome. So keep asking. Um, a question regarding on controls. You've talked about coding agents like Cursor, etc. And you've talked about some of the security concerns. Do you think that do you expect to see some features in some of these solutions to address these security concerns that we've discussed in things like Cursor, within the product itself to help with these security concerns?
yeah, I think the cursor and the windsurf they all have the custom rules, right? I think custom rule you can apply. I also publish a paper, a document in the Cloud Security Alliance, two actually about the Viber coding security rules, together with other security researcher. Maybe take a look. It's not 100% make secure, but at least it's much better than without applying it, right? Using the custom rules, say, okay, you need to implement the authentication, and please do not add the .env file into the GitHub, never hard code any API keys, right? So all this it should be in the custom rule. That should help a little bit. Also, you can say, okay, for this particular application, make sure it has a valid access control and has valid login component, right? And it helps
Right.
in the yeah. I think a sneaker also trying to do this, right? Like examples that I gave before.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think your company may also have something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah, we do. Yeah, we implement things like runtime defense to analyze all the tokens and the prompts in between the agent and the model as well. So yeah, we do some of those things as well. So
Mhm.
on the same kind of evolution front of like, back to MCP for a second. There's a question about, given some of these new standards, right? MCP being a good example of one. Is it possible that these standards will evolve to have some built-in security features, kind of like that might be unique to AI agents, kind of like how HTTP evolved to HTTPS over time? Do you see any sort of like standards, these standard architectures implementing new security standards on top of them that might be included? Do you see that happening?
So at the very beginning, I when MCP coming out, the signal is very clear. It's a general purpose, trying to just provide the context to the model, right? So it is basically it's kind of like if you look at it, it's more like TCP or UDP, right?
Right.
So security is what you need to do on top of it, right? But gradually, I think there is some more discussion, and also Venice and also other team as well. I just talk about is to have some of improvement, like especially the tool definition, adding some security construct into it. I think that's maybe a good way. And also in terms of how do you invoke the MCP server to, I think it's using, currently there is an improvement proposal to say like OAuth, the newer version of OAuth with metadata, right?
Yeah.
Construct. So that should be able to improve the security a little bit. In
Right.
the long run, make it as like kind of like from HTTP to HTTPS, it's possible. Yeah, why not? But I mean, the initial idea is really general purpose, just to
Right.
say it's a plumbing for the context. That's it, right?
Yeah.
You can maybe add something, yeah. But I do see the benefit of making security as a necessary element of MCP. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. We'll see where that goes. So we've talked about a bunch of different guidelines. Are there any other frameworks or tools you would suggest people look at?
So OWASP just recently released the security guide. It's like within it document some of the framework. I myself also have the open source framework with that in terms of threat modeling and also the zero trust. Yeah, the AICM, CCM is good. If you want to measure the risk, we recently released the version 0.5 of Agentic Core Risk Vulnerability Scoring System. You guys are welcome to participate and give us comments. We're trying to make it more objective in terms of give the scoring. Currently, there is some of the weights that we need to adjust in the scoring system. Yeah, otherwise, I think the industry is still in the nascent stage, like the early stage. It's
Yeah.
still involved, and we are still early, right? So it's a good time to contribute.
Yeah. No, yeah, definitely people should contribute. Okay, so in the next 18, we talked about the past 12 to 18 months. What do you think the next 18 to 24 months looks like In the AI security landscape, are there technologies or standards you're watching? Like, is there anything that you're keeping a close eye on in that area?
So I do see like some of people using the agent for the Security Operations Center, right? A
Right.
SOC, yeah.
Yes.
And also using agent for bug bounty or
Yep.
discover the 0 day, the biggest sleep from Google, all
Yeah.
right, was able to find the SQLite 0 day with their biggest sleep project. Uh, and I think we may losing the battles if we are not careful, because the model, the agent capability is really depends on model. If model evolve faster than we can defend against the hacker, the hacker can use this model, right, to do red teaming or more like hacking to agentic AI applications. So that's better. I think we need more people involved in the agentic AI security.
Yeah.
Just focus on that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah, it's
what we.
interesting because you're right. I mean, I think there's this we oftentimes we spend a lot of time obviously talking about security for AI, but there's AI for security and agents in places like the SOC and vulnerability management programs could be super valuable. And then to your point, they also had could be attacked. And so yeah, there's a lot of things to consider there. All right, so before we wrap here, I'm curious to hear. What's the one thing you're personally excited or worried about as we move into kind of this AI native future? I mean, I think you said earlier about the fact that some percentage of traffic on the internet will be agent to agent traffic. Like generally, that paints a very different future than the current internet that we have today. So what is one thing that you're really excited about in that future or worried about?
Yeah, I think the agentic AI is revolutionize the productivity in the organizations. It will be here to stay. This year is just a genesis. It may like a decade to place a thought, but we are moving this way, right? So this is exciting for everyone, right? I do believe it will create more jobs like previous industry,
Yeah,
and it will destroy jobs as well. And the only way you can stay ahead is learn. You're never too old to learn, right? And to do some of hands-on, vibe coding it. Whatever your idea, you vibe coding it.
yeah,
The war is certainly, we may losing the battle against the hackers. So the more people get involved to do red teaming is good. If you build your application for your organization, remember red teaming early, red teaming often, maybe also leverage like your company, right, as a company as well to help you. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, no, that's great. We appreciate it. And Ken, before you go, I think you're going to Black Hat next week, right?
I will be there for just 3 days because I have the meetings in DC. So unfortunately, I will be Sunday. I will be there, and Tuesday I fly back. So
Are you presenting anything anywhere? Should anyone
yeah.
uh
So Stanford University, they have a event in Punk Rock Museum in
okay.
the August 4th. I think it's
Okay.
Monday night. Yeah. So I will talk about the AI vulnerability scoring system. Uh, Yeah, with fireside chat with Bavia. Bavia, she lead the Stanford University's vulnerability management practice as
Yeah.
a ISO office. So we will do, and I think they will buy 5 books of agentic AI books, and maybe give this books as a lottery to participant. So
Excellent.
so
All right.
so that's what
Excellent.
I
That
heard.
sounds great, Ken. Well, hey, thank you very much for being here today. We appreciate it. Thanks to the audience who joined. TrojAI webinar series. We typically do this monthly. This was a great one, Ken. And if anyone's going to be at Black Hat, stop by at the TrojAI booth if you're around. Say hi to Ken, and Ken will we'll see you next time. And thanks a lot.
Thank you, Lee. Yeah, really appreciate the opportunity and lots of good discussions. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks. Thanks, Ken. Thanks,
Yeah,
everybody.
take care.